Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. Today is a book review, which I don't do too many of these, but maybe I need to do more. Finding resources and materials on how to do our craft better, whether hobbyist or professional, that's useful. So today we're going to talk about this book by Murray Carter, How to Make Money Making Knives. And if you are a professional, and by professional I mean someone who pays the bills doing this craft, then of course this is going to be of interest to you, as it is to me. Even if you're a hobbyist, you have another job and you blacksmith on the evenings and weekends, or bladesmith on the evenings and weekends. This is also of interest because a lot of you guys are buying tools and building your shop up with the proceeds from sales of knives and things that you make. So in any event, you need to watch this video, right? So there's this thing going around YouTube, not going around YouTube, but I've seen it. People complain when you ask to subscribe or give a thumbs up to a video. But I'll just be honest with you, this month has been pretty bad for views. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just I'm not putting out the kind of content that people want to see, or if people are busy doing other things, or if YouTube is not pushing my videos out as much. I don't know, but it would really help if you want to subscribe and click the thumbs up. If you find any value in this content, that'd be awesome. So let's get into it. I bought this book for $34.48, something like that, just under $35, with the tax in my state and whatever else. So it's going to be between, $30 and $35 for you to buy off of Amazon. This is I think it's a print-on-demand book, because this actual book was actually made in Texas on the 26th of September. But anyway, it's a recent offering from Murray Carter. It's a recent book. So a little bit about Murray Carter, if you don't know who he is. He's actually a mastersmith with the American Bladesmith Society. He has a mastersmith rating, but more notably, I guess, for him, it is the fact that he studied and worked in Japan for 18 years as a bladesmith, and apprenticed for 6 of those years under a Japanese master bladesmith. And that's where he learned his trade. Prior to that, he really had many knives, as far as I'm aware from his stories. And he learned the craft of bladesmithing in Japan with the techniques and methods of the Japanese bladesmith. And so that's interesting. And so the methods that he uses in his craft are primarily, if not solely, laminated blades. From what I've seen, most of his knives are a low carbon steel, forge welded around a high carbon steel edge, edge steel, and that's how most of his knives are made. And then he also offers a stainless steel sandmai, so you have stainless steel cladding the outside of a high carbon core that creates the actual edge. Coffee break. If you want to pause this and go grab a cup of coffee, feel free. We're just going to kind of relax, take it easy a little bit, talk about some bladesmithing. It's going to be fun. So that's Murray Carter in a nutshell. Well, that's not really Murray Carter in a nutshell. That's kind of his product in a nutshell. Beyond that, he is a Christian, which I really appreciate, and he makes that, he doesn't shy away from sharing that in his books. I do have 2 of his, another one of his books. I'll touch on this briefly maybe, but I'm talking about this one. But he's a successful businessman, which is not the same thing as being a successful knife maker, in my opinion. What else? Yeah, he's a family guy. Stuff like that. He was on Forged in Fire. My first impression of Murray Carter, I have to say, was not entirely fair, because I think the first time that I saw him was on Forged in Fire, and I saw him stating that he had forged something like 20,000 blades at that time, and it's more now. And to be honest, I didn't believe him. I thought he was making that up, which of course, was my fault, because I assumed that, and shame on me. After I learned more about him, over the years, I ended up buying this book, I think last year, and read it. But after I learned about actually what he does a little more, he's not lying. He didn't make that up. And the reason I can, believe that now is because the methods that he uses, these traditional Japanese bladesmithing methods, are very efficient, and they are centered around producing a working blade in really the least amount of time possible. Not just a working blade, but a high functioning heirloom quality blade in the least amount of time possible. And there's nothing, those two things don't need to conflict. But the point is that the methods that he uses when it comes to heat treating, forging, etc., he uses power hammers, these kinds of things. I realized, okay, yeah, no, it is possible for a hardworking guy who's driven to do what he says he did. So anyway, I guess that's a lesson to me, not to assume things just because I think I know. Because I make knives, so I know you can't make that many knives. Yeah. I think the more that I learn, the more I know that I don't know, and maybe the more willing I am to learn from other people who have, gone far ahead of me, and that's what this is all about. So, with that little note of my, little lesson learned there, how to make money making knives. I'm going to just talk about some of the high points of this book. I just read this book yesterday. It's an easy read. It's an easy read. I went through it in an evening, but it's subject matter that I'm really interested in too, so that helps. But I'll just read. So let me just say, it's kind of broken up into multiple very short chapters, multiple little sections. And what he does is he touches on or talks about specific points about, within the world of making knives to make money, within the world of business of knife making. Okay, so let's just go through these real quick. What is success? Short-term and long-term goals. The $10,000 customer. What are you, an artist, artisan, or craftsman? Enlisting help from others. Keeping the books. The importance of being generous. How to price your product. Customer service. Difficult customers. Custom knife orders. How to interact with suppliers and dealers. Equipping your shop. And then there's some more. So, another dozen, 15 more, something like that. So basically he touches on taking all these things together, taking all these little short chapters. If you read the whole book, you kind of get a general foundation about how to go about making money making knives. And I will say that this book is worth the $34, $35. Because there is and he touches on this in the book, there's a lot of information out there on how to make knives. Like if you want to learn how to make a knife, you can watch this channel, you can watch myriad other channels, books, with the internet these days. 20 years ago, when I started making knives, we had books in the library, and I think there was like, 2 or 3, maybe two books. No, I don't know, maybe 2 books at my library, and then you could order books from other libraries to borrow them, and I could only find like maybe 3 other ones. There just wasn't a whole lot. There's a lot more now. So how to make knives, that information is readily available, and some of it's better than others, but that's a different subject. When it comes to actually making money making knives, doing this as a business, that's I think that's a little more ambiguous, and I think that information is not as easy to find. So I'll just say right off the bat, I do think this is worth $35 if the subject matter is of interest to you, and it is to me, because I have been making money making knives. I've been paying the bills solidly for doing nothing but this for 4 years, but I have so much to learn. I have so far to go. I'm just getting started, quite frankly. So this is useful information. He really helps you understand what it takes to run a business as a knife maker. Like I said a few minutes ago, being a successful knife maker and being a successful businessman or a professional knife maker are not really the same thing, in my opinion. Successful knife maker, I think, is somebody who makes good knives, right? That's success as a knife maker. But if you want to be successful as a businessman or some professional knife maker, that's sort of a whole other story. And it's been said, it's in this book and elsewhere, that making a knife is easy, making a perfect knife or a good knife is difficult, and making a living making knives is very difficult. And I think that's probably true, but I also think that the lack of information on how to do that probably is what makes it the most difficult. If you're willing to put in the work, if you're willing to sacrifice a little bit or a lot, in various aspects of your lifestyle or whatever, in the beginning, as needed, whatever, if you're willing to do what it takes, then it can be done. But having sort of an understanding of how to go about it is really helpful. So if you're interested in doing this as a profession, professionally, get this book. I wish I would have got this book, quite frankly, 6 years ago when I started selling knives. So what else? Other things he touches on that I really resonate with, I'll just kind of touch some of the high points that really resonated with me. How about that? You might get something different or, focus on other parts of the book, which is awesome. So one big thing for me that I've had to grow through and learn is the relationship between what I want to make and what people want to buy. And he talks about that in here. And I think that's super helpful because the reality is when you are a business person, when you are providing a product for a customer, at the end of the day, what the customer wants to buy is going to dictate what you sell. I think there's this idea that, I know there's this idea, I've heard it from several different knife makers, that this idea that you should only make exactly what you want because that's where your artistry is going to be the best. People are going to love that the most. And if you make something you don't want to make, then it's going to be crap and nobody's going to want to buy it anyway, and it's just a total waste of time. Now, while I think there is some truth to that, I think that's sort of leaning to one side of the argument or the issue too far, and I don't think that provides a realistic viewpoint or position to approach the market as a professional bladesmith or knife maker. Now, I know there's some guys who have done this, and that's great. I think that if you start out just doing that and slowly build your customer base over literally years, and nobody expects you to do anything but that, you don't have customers out here that are expecting something different. So you've built it around this particular business model, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But if you've if you've made some knives maybe for a couple years or whatever, and your skills are you feel are marketable and you want to get into the business, then maybe that's not a realistic approach unless you want to spend several more years sort of doing that. And again, this is a generality because some people, there's knife makers that very much so do this, and then there's other knife makers that don't. And so a little side note on that, Murray Carter is coming from a standpoint of making relatively large quantities of knives compared to many bladesmiths. That's his approach to the business, and that's where he's coming from. So if that's not at all what you want to do, then maybe ignore that part, but whatever. So he gets into that, and I'll just show you this briefly here if you can see that. This is this circle represents what the knife maker is good at making, and this is really good too because on this side of the argument usually it's just like what I want to make and what people want to buy. Well, what are you good at making? There's that aspect too. So I really appreciate this. This is helpful to get a realistic picture of how to go about this. What the knife maker is good at making, what the knife maker likes to make, and then what the customer likes to buy. And the sweet spot is in the middle where those all meet, and everybody is happy. I mean, is it a little bit of a compromise? Perhaps, yeah. But what do you want to do? Do you want to just make what you want to make, or do you want to be in business making knives? So that's just cool. And then that's helpful. And then another neat concept that he points out or talks about in the book here is how he likes to work. Basically, the first 3 weeks of a month, he's working on the making blades to sell. That's basically paying the bills, making profit. That's the business part. And then the last week of the month, he sort of tries to set that aside for working on sort of the projects that he likes to make, but maybe the customers aren't necessarily as interested in buying or maybe don't know about yet. And so that's room for artistic expression and development of new product. I thought that was really good. I wish I was there. I'm not there yet by any means. I have a lot of work to do to get a lot more efficient, kind of get things dialed in. That's one thing that I have done. And here's the problem is as you're learning, the advantage that he had with the apprenticeship is that he had an opportunity to learn all this stuff, really dial in his skills by the time he was out on his own, or at least get a good footing, and then he could progress from there. It's a little different, when you're trying to learn a bunch of different things and try new things, and that's great, but at some point sort of dialing in what you're trying to do, like the type of product and things like this. And so I'm still working on that personally, but again, this book is helpful in that regard. And other few things I appreciated about this book is, he's talking about custom knife orders, how to deal with that. Some of what he talks about, I do. Some I don't, and some I'm going to. I think he talks about the difference between selling stock items and taking custom orders. And so I'm gonna implement, start to implement some of those principles, which I think will help my business. Let's see what else. How to interact with suppliers and dealers. He talks about selling to dealers and the pros and cons there. And from what I gather, mostly it's a pro. It can be a good thing with the right situation. So that's something to think about going forward. He does talk a little bit about the product, like blade performance, edge geometry, things like that. What it is that you need to be able to provide your customer and this kind of thing. He also talks about like presentation of your product, which I think is helpful as well. Cases, boxes, and sheaths for your knives, and that's a little section there. Yeah, teaching others, advertising, different things. On a personal note, one of the things he does talk to in here about is keeping the business going during a crisis, and he's actually referring to the pandemic that happened. What is it? Almost a year and a half ago now. So this is a pretty recent book, you can tell. And one of the things he talks about in here is actually, because he's into guns, he's into outdoors pursuits and stuff, dirt biking, does karate. So he has these different interests. I think he flies too and different things. So he's not a one-dimensional fellow. And so he actually mentions taking out some money out to invest in an alternative or a second shop property. Where if need be, he could shift his entire operation to there, but in the meantime have part of his operation going, which I think is really cool to have the ability to do that. But what's crazy is last week I was talking to my buddy Luke Reilly at Reilly Custom Leather, who's sort of on YouTube, but he's a leather maker and does some blacksmithing as well. And he's from the town that I grew up in, Council, Idaho, and I was talking to him, and he mentions Murray Carter moved to Council, Idaho, or set up a shop there. I was like, no freaking way, right? So find out a little bit later, he's got a, and he meant this. It's in the book here, kind of Honest Edge Ranch, which is a sort of a resort destination thing where you can go to take classes. And do other stuff like archery and dirt biking and things, cool stuff like that. And that is just south of Council in Indian Valley. So it was like no way, like it's, I don't know, crazy. So anyway, I hope to meet Murray Carter one of these days when we go back home or go back and visit or something like that. So that's on my plan. But anyway, not to be too long-winded here, I could cover more aspects of the book. The whole book is worth reading for sure. And yeah, I think this fills, I guess to sum up, I think this fills a sort of a void. I know other knife makers and stuff touch on this, but to have a whole book, I haven't seen one. I'm not aware of any others. There's probably some out there, but I'm not aware of any others that sort of concisely put together an outline of what it looks like to have a business as a knife maker and be successful. And I'm not getting any kind of kickback or anything here, but this is just a thought. $35 might be a lot for a little book like this, but keep in mind that sometimes the best advice is free and it's worth exactly what it costs or something like that, which I know is kind of a double-edged sword, because in the day of YouTube here, like the content that I'm putting out and stuff like that, it doesn't really cost you anything to watch. It costs you some annoyance and time with ads, right? It doesn't really cost you anything. So I understand that and there's a lot of other good content on YouTube. So I understand that concept doesn't necessarily, ring true everywhere. But coming from a guy who has spent 30 years making a living as a bladesmith, I think your money could be, spent far worse than this. So that's my take on it. Appreciate you guys watching, and we will see you on the next video.